Hi everybody. Today we are going to make some steamed rice, some aubergine teriyaki and some stir-fried broccoli with chilli and garlic. And the first thing we've got to do is steam our rice. And the way to do that, you need a sieve, a pan with a lid, a measuring cup. It doesn't have to be a measuring cup, it can be any cup. You just need to work out how to fill it. So what I've got is a big bowl of rice. I have massive bags, so rather than rattle around with all of those for you, I thought I'd just decant it. And what you want to do is you want to scoop out and make sure you've got a level cup, if you can see that. And I pop that into my sieve, and depending on how hungry your family is, depends on how many cups you use. They say roughly a cup a person for an adult. So we've got all the cups of rice in there, and what you have to do next is you have to wash it. So we're going to go to the sink and give it a wash. And bring your measuring cup with you. So pop your rice in the sink, and you're going to use cold running water. So turn your tap on and give your rice a rinse. Just gently, see I'm moving it around, getting it all wet. And you can see in the pan just how milky that water is for the moment. So you want to keep on going until it's nice and clear. So at this point I'm just going to tip the water out of the pan and start again to see how much progress I'm making. What I find is if you agitate it, i.e. move it around, this whole process is done a lot more quickly. Just be careful that you don't flick it out into the sink. The reason you want to be careful is don't forget you've measured it completely so that you know exactly, precisely how much rice you had in that cup. So look, it's getting a little clearer. The more rice you have, obviously, the longer this takes. I think one last go and we'll be nearly there. See that water there is much clearer. You can see the bottom of the pan rather than before when it was absolutely milky white. So what you're going to do is empty that pan of water, and you want to drain your rice. So you see at the moment when you're holding it steady, it looks as though there's no water in there. But if you move it, you can see this extra water coming out. And hold it over your pan, and you can see just how much. The reason this is relevant is because you want to measure out the precisely amount of water to go into your precise amount of rice. So just give it a shake. Carefully, don't flick it over your shoulder. That's about right. So you can see, look, that is a lot of water that's just come off that rice. So you've got that nice and dry. You want to tip your rice back into the pan. And now you want to measure out your water. Now we had, so now that would be the amount of rice in there, but you want to account for the amount of residual water that's on there. So I go to a little bit less than the vessel that you've used. As I said, you don't have to use a measuring cup with precise details on it. You know, so you can use a mug, you can use anything. So just use a little bit less than the layer that you've smoothed it off to. So there we go. Got our rice all measured out, water measured in. We're going to turn the heat on and bring it up to a rolling boil. When it's boiling, we're going to turn it down to a gentle simmer and put a lid on. And you need to do that quite quickly so you don't lose too much of the water you've carefully measured. So now this is boiling really vigorously. It's got a boil all over. I'm going to pop the lid on and turn the heat down to a simmer. And what happens is the rice literally absorbs all that hot water and becomes light and fluffy. So you don't have to strain, you don't have to do any of that. It should be, that's it, we like it. If you look at a Chinese rice cooker what happens is it all boils up to touch the surface, and then it all dies back down, and that boiling water absorbs into all the grains. So we'll come and look at it in about 10-12 minutes, and it should be ready. So whilst that's cooking, I'm going to prepare my aubergines for the aubergine teriyaki. So I'm going to cut this aubergine in half, so form a bridge with my securing hand. Cut through, and if it hasn't gone all the way through, just turn your aubergine around and cut through the stalk. So now you've got lovely two halves just like that. And what we're going to do to make sure the aubergine cooks nice and evenly is you're going to score it. Make sure you go all the way through, but not through to the skin. So you can see I'm going quite a long way down and almost to the edge, but not through to the skin the other side. So turn it around, and you want to put a nice diamond pattern. So you've got one, and we'll do the other. You do need to go all the way down to the bottom, because that way it separates the aubergine into these cubes, and that means the heat can get all the way through. I grab my roasting tray and I put my aubergines in there. I put them top to tail so they cook evenly. What happens next is a little bit of oil onto the aubergine. Just rub it in a bit more. I'm using groundnut oil. You can use coconut oil, you can use olive oil, whatever suits you. So pop those in, and then I'm going to turn them over and I'm going to cook them flesh side down. I'm going to put them in a hot oven until there's a nice caramelization on that underside. So I put those into the center of the oven, and now what I'm going to do is just make the marinade. We're going to grab some soy sauce. Use a measuring spoon. Make sure you fill your measuring spoon to the top. I have to shake this bottle because it's quite full. And just watch out, because sometimes things come out quickly, sometimes they come out slowly. There you go. There's the soy sauce. Now we're going to use some maple syrup. You can use honey if you want, or a little sugar, just not quite as much. There we go, maple syrup. So the next ingredient is a mirin. Mirin is a Japanese fortified sweetened rice wine. If you can't get hold of that and you have some sherry maybe lying around your house in your drinks cupboard, you can use that. I use a sweet sherry, but you could use a Fino or a dry sherry, that's fine. Or you can use mirin itself. We're going to pop a spoonful of that in here too. You want to give it a bit of a stir because the maple syrup's quite thick and it sinks to the bottom. So just stir it so it all becomes incorporated. So that's it, it's very simple marinade, and what we're going to do is when the aubergine comes out of the oven and it's got a nice caramelised fleshy bit, we're going to turn it over, pour the marinade over it and pop it back in the oven to cook. So my timer's just gone off and it's time to lift the lid and see if your rice is cooked. So I've got a cloth here because I think that handle's going to be hot. So lift off the lid and give it a bit of a stir. It's looking good. And let that steam come out. You want to give it a taste. So that is soft, and as they say, don't fight the rice. So it's not al dente at all. Chinese rice. It is literally just soft and perfect. So once you've tested if your rice is cooked or not, you want to pop the lid back on it, and it will sit there on a warming plate and stay absolutely perfect for a long amount of time actually. So there you have it, perfectly sticky, lovely Thai rice. So the aubergine have been cooking, got my marinade here. I'm going to pull them out of the oven and turn them over, so I need to make sure I've got a corkboard or something heat-proof to put them on, and I'm going to grab some oven gloves before I take them out of the oven. Here they are. Oh, such a beautiful colour. There we go. Keep your oven gloves around the tray so you remember it's hot. Grab a spatula and just ease them up gently and turn them over. And the other one, that's perfect. So now what you need to do is just pour the teriyaki sauce over the top. So once the teriyaki sauce is on your aubergines, you're going to pop them straight back in the oven. So return those to the oven, they'll probably be ready in about 5 or so minutes. So the aubergine should be ready, and I'm just going to get it out of the oven. Here we go. I'm going to pop that on a plate. Here we go. They look so pretty with those crisscross pattern. I'm going to pour any remaining juices from the pan over the aubergine. So there you go, that is aubergine teriyaki. So you just need to keep your aubergine warm while you prepare your veg. So now we're going to prepare our broccoli with chilli and garlic. So when you stir fry, you need to make sure you get your mise en place done first. And mise en place is literally putting everything in its place. So we want to prepare all the ingredients in the recipe and make sure we've got it all measured out in little bowls so we're ready to cook, because stir frying is very quick and therefore you don't want to be chopping something else when you should be stir frying your pan. So that's what we're going to do first. I'm going to prepare our garlic, our ginger, and chop our chilies. So I've got some ginger here. Now with ginger, recipes often call for kind of centimetre measures or amounts, but and it's very difficult to tell how much you want to use because you've got thin bits and fat bits and what's a centimetre. So I advise you just over time learn if you like ginger or not and start with a kind of guesstimate of what that might be. Kind of, if it looks like a lot and you don't like the smell of it, don't put it all in. So I'm going to wash this first though, because I actually use the skin, but it needs a good old wash first. So I've given it a bit of a dry as well. I'm going to grab a grater and I'm going to grate off what I need. Always put your box grater on your board, it's much easier. I'm pressing really quite hard because it's very fibrous. That is definitely what I need here. I'm going to put my ginger in a little bowl. Scrape up what we've got here. I use a knife. Be careful of your fingers. And then I'm going to do the same with a clove or two of garlic. Break off your garlic cloves from your bulb. I'm going to cut off that flat end. Press my blade of my knife down onto my cloves in order to release that skin. Release the skin. And grate your garlic. Again, make sure you've got your box grater on your board. It's much easier than trying to do it in the air over that. And watch those pads of your fingers. The knuckles are the bit that will cut. If you hold the garlic with the pads, then they won't get cut by that sharp metal. If you prefer, you can use a normal crusher. And make sure that you have a look inside, because there's always lots of garlic in there too. So there we have the garlic. And we'll put the garlic in here. Watch out for your fingers. So I'm going to take this over and get it rinsed off. So the next thing I want to cut is a chilli. Now these are really fiery. This is a bird's eye chilli, and oh my goodness, they can be hot. So I wouldn't suggest testing any seeds on these ones. But you want to, I'm going to chop the whole thing, and I'm going to use it all because we like it quite fiery. But if you aren't such a spice monster, you actually don't have to have it at all. Or you can just use a tiny, tiny amount to get a bit of flavour. So I'm just going to cut it straight up like this, using the technique. Watch out, make sure your fingertips are curled underneath your knuckles. Oh, I can smell the spice from here. Discard the stalk, and then using your rainbow technique, just make sure you chop. Chop. chop, 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 chop. Just going to gently move those bits of chili off the knife. Give it one last chop. And pop it into another bowl. There we go. So now, because there's chili all over my knife, my hands, my board, I'm going to go and wash everything. Remember with chili, do not rub your face or touch anything because the chili stays on your fingers for a bit. So it will transfer to any delicate areas. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to prepare my broccoli. So here's the broccoli, and this is a head. And what you want to do is take off the florets. I use a knife to do this. And I go as close to the stalk as I can. What you'll notice is as you get towards the crown of your broccoli head, the stalks and pieces get a lot smaller. So I make sure I kind of go round and then chop the last bit off actually as one. What you want to do when you're making a stir fry is you actually want your pieces, I think, really quite small, because that way it gets to cook and the aromats you put in don't get to burn. So I do chop them up probably roughly about that size. So you look at your smallest bit and you think, okay, brilliant. And I'm going to cut these up to mimic that. So I hold the stalks and I go down through the middle of it. And there I got these lovely little bits which cook really easily. So watch out for your fingers. Maybe it's easier to do it this way. So you can do it that way if you prefer. Lay it on its flat side. Take your knife through the center of the stalk. Knife through the bridge. And halve it again. Now these ones are still quite small, but I'm still going to halve that one. And then you get to the crown, and you just want to cut those off so they're roughly the size of the other pieces you have. So I can see a little brown bit on there. I don't want to eat that, so I'm just going to cut that bit off and discard it. Now, I also love to eat the stalk. It's one of the best bits. It's really sweet. What you need to do is take off the really fibrous outside edge and that dry bit at the bottom. So I'm going to cut down through here. Just cake off that outside edge. It's quite fiddly. But what you've got is you've got a nice bit of inside stalk full of fibre, very good for you. So I'm just going to chop that dry end off, discard those bits. Always good to keep your board free of the bits you don't want to eat. So I'm going to cut that stalk in half lengthways, lay them on their flat sides, and just chop them into semicircles, or they're not really circles, but just chop them into slices. Watch out for that securing hand. Make sure those fingertips are under those knuckles. So there we have our broccoli all chopped up nice and small. Now obviously the cooking time of this will depend on the size of your broccoli, so you'll have to taste it. And then we've got our aromats here and we're ready to go. So I'm going to turn on my hob and add a little bit of oil. You can use coconut oil, I'm going to use a groundnut oil because that's what they traditionally use, but you can use olive oil, whatever, rapeseed oil. And I'm going to heat up the pan and we're going to cook these along the way. I just want to say a note about stir frying. You will see that I am using a pan, a flat pan, not a wok. Now a wok is designed so that it sits in a huge piece of metal with a great burning fire underneath it. So the sides of that wok are underneath the surface of the cooker with all these flames around it, which means that all the sides get lovely and hot. So the cooking and the stir frying and all the steam that stays in that conical shape really helps everything to cook quickly. I don't have a fire pit and I don't have gas. If you have gas and you can get the fire to go up the side and stay on the bottom, great. But I find to stir fry with a flat hob like I've got, much easier to have a surface area of a pan that's nice and big. And so that's what I've got here today. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to put some oil into my pan. And then I'm going to turn on my heat and heat it up. And whilst that's heating up, I'm going to put my aromats into it. So in goes the ginger. In goes the garlic. And in goes the chili. As that oil heats up, we're going to stir the ginger and the garlic and the chilli. Now what you'll notice here is that it all looks quite dry, and I don't like to use too much oil. So you can also fry using water. So I'm going to pour in a little water, and that will help cook those aromats without burning them. So you can see they've spread out a bit, and this way of cooking then with the water really helps the garlic actually cook and not remain raw, but also not burn. Now after a few seconds, we're going to pick up our broccoli and we're going to pop that into. I like to add all the little bits of green because they all just fry up nicely and they just add to the flavour. So you can see it's all getting a bit dry in there, and what we're going to do is add a little bit more water. What that does when you're using a flat bottom pan is it simulates the steam that would be in a wok and helps it all cook. Ooh, you can smell the chilli. And at this point, I'm going to add a sprinkling of salt. Give it a stir again. If you wanted to at that point, you could add some soy sauce instead. So keep cooking, keep stir frying, and you'll notice it begin to become really green and vibrant, at which point you know that you're getting there. And you want this broccoli crunchy. You want it cooked but crunchy. So don't let it go that horrible kind of beige colour. When green veg lose their vibrancy and they go that beige colour, they kind of have a weird bitterness, sludgy taste to them as well. So you want to take a bit out, put it on your board, let it cool a little bit, and I always take a bit off the stalk, and that's what I try. So that's absolutely banging. Tastes delicious, still crispy, vibrant, delicious. I'm going to grab a bowl and we're going to pop it into that. And there we have it. Delicious broccoli with ginger, garlic and chilli. And the next thing to do is you've got your rice and you're going to put that into a bowl too. So what you want to do is be careful because the lid might be hot, so put a cloth on it if it is. And here we have the rice. And we're going to literally take that off the heat and pop that into our bowl. Lovely sticky Thai rice. And here it is. Aubergine teriyaki, steamed rice and broccoli stir-fried with chilli and garlic.